Hello and welcome to October 2017 Parents Time Out. I'm Karen Locke-Culp. Today we are getting into happy readers, how to have happy readers. I am a child development expert. I'm a facilitator of happy families. I created the podcast called We Turned Out Okay. And I know personally your struggles with getting your kids to be happy readers because I've got two kids who are now teenagers who once upon a time were struggling with reading and struggling with learning how to do it. And for me, what I have learned in all of my sort of education and years of parenting and years of teaching myself is it's about motivation. So I've been thinking about this since the beginning of the school year. And I've been thinking about how it came up for me then because kids starting school are very often kind of assessed, right? We want to, as teachers, we want to find out what do they know and what's going to motivate them most to teach them what they need to know. And reading is a huge, huge part of that. So that's what's happening in schools. And I bet as parents, a lot of you, maybe not all of you, but a lot of you are getting feedback that your child can't focus, that your child, especially in the younger grades, that like they're seeing problems that maybe you don't see at home, or maybe you even do, and you just don't know how. Like, how the heck is this kid ever going to learn to read, for example? And I wanted to talk today about the two main, most important factors in learning how to read, and what you can do at home, what we can do in our homes to make those two things happen. And the first one to think about is that reading is communication. Like at its heart, reading is when you read something, somebody wrote it so that somebody in the future, not right there in front of them, but at some point in the future, could read it, right? And so it's our job to think about that communication aspect of reading. And if you look back on your child's entire life, how like just about everything that they've done has been about communication. Even before they could talk, they're hearing you communicate to them. And when they started talking, it was not to idly pass the time. Well, I mean, it was with babbling and stuff, I suppose it is. But like when they wanted something, they wanted it. And the way to get that was to communicate it somehow. How do people communicate if they're not crying? They're using words, they're using language. And that is a huge motivator for kids, right? And our job with reading is to make it motivating for them to read. And like I've been thinking about how can we as parents do this? How can we make it motivating for our kids to read? And the first thing I think about is my own sons when they were learning how to read. What motivated them was not me sitting down and saying, so listen, or a teacher sitting down and saying, hey, child, in order to be successful in your life, you're going to have to learn how to read. So here are these rules, here is this text, go ahead and let's start working on it. That's totally not motivating. It's like saying, eat your spinach because it's really good for you. I mean, I eat spinach because I happen to love spinach, not because I think it's really good for me. I mean, it is really good for me and that's great, but that's not my motivation. That's not why I'm eating spinach. And we can't think about reading like this for kids. We have to think about like what's motivating for them. And in the podcast referring to this episode, it was a bonus episode I did back in September, which I will link to in the show notes down here. I talked about my oldest and how playing the Pokemon game was a huge motivator for him. That was why he wanted to read. He wanted to know more about Pokemon. He wanted to be in this world of Pokemon, and the only way you could get there was to read. So he either had to have somebody read it when they had time or when it was bedtime or whatever, or he had to be like, all right, I'm going to learn how to read. That was incredibly motivating for him. And other thing, when we think about means of communication, writing as a means of communication and reading, like if we can show our children ourselves using writing to communicate, so making lists for ourselves, reading something and then sharing it with somebody else, like reading to our children, that is a huge motivator. And it's these actions that we take that show our kids why they should read, why they need to be reading. It's because they want to get to that that place of like understanding and being communicated with. I mean, that's really That's like the big motivator here. So if you are still a little bit concerned about how to do this, how to get reading into your child's life to be a tool of communication and a motivating, to be, for how to get your kids to be motivated to read, well, I created a guide. It's the Guide to Happy Readers. It's available at WeTurnedOutOK.com/readers. And you just go to that page, type in that, address and go to that page. And you can also click in the show notes. I have it right down below. So you just have to click the link here. You don't have to type anything in, actually. And you can sign up for it. It's super easy to do because it's just like, you don't even have to give me your email address. I just want to give this information to you. And actually I have a little copy of it myself. So this is what it looks like. It's the Guide to Happy Readers. Yours won't have the writing I did on top because as I was preparing for this video, I really wanted to make sure I talked about the two most important factors. And I think that's where I'm gonna leave it. The two most important factors in helping your child become a happy reader, be really motivated to read, are one, recognizing that it's communication. It's a communication tool. And two, figuring out what motivates your child to want to read, and then getting them more of that. So that's it for this month's Parents Time Out for October of 2017. Again, I'm Karen Locke-Culp. I'm wishing you the best with wonderful happy readers and just a good day, a good life. All right, I'll see you next month. Bye.